Hi guys, welcome back to my Patreon where every single week you can tune in and get exclusive content. Not only that, but you can also message me anytime and receive a response within 24 hours if you are on the higher tier. So in this week's episode, what I'm going to do is outline whether or not you should stay or leave a relationship. A lot of people will come to me and they'll ask me in my one-to-one sessions, they'll say, okay, should I stay? Should I leave? I don't know what to do. Now, it's never that easy. You might think you know, and you'll come to me and then I'll give you a completely different perspective and you might change your mind. So usually people are really, really unsure. There is no real kind of yes or no answer to this. Sometimes some people come to me and they're just hoping that their partner cheats or does something extreme so that they can just end the relationship. They just don't know how they're feeling. So instead of telling you whether or not you should stay or leave, usually what I do with my clients is I ask them a set of questions. And in these set of questions, by answering these questions, they'll be able to understand whether or not this relationship is for them or is this not for them. Okay? So the first question I always ask my clients if they're thinking about whether or not to leave their relationship is, do you like the person you are within this relationship, or do you prefer the person you are outside of the relationship? If you find that this relationship has turned you into a person that you no longer like or respect, so you are no longer able to control your mouth, you're no longer able to control your urges, you are miserable, you are rude, you're disrespectful, you are entitled and greedy, but you're not like that outside of the relationship, and you're not like that with other people, then what that suggests is either you should leave the relationship because this person is bringing out the worst in you, or you should leave the relationship because you are not kind to the people who are closest to you. You are only capable of being kind to people who are at an emotional distance. And therefore, it's not fair on the person that tries to connect to you because for some reason, and due to unresolved trauma or unresolved issues or unresolved insecurities, they seem to become your punching bag. And that's not fair on them. So either or is not a good sign. Whereas if you are somebody who is, very capable outside of the relationship, but when you're in this relationship, you make better decisions. You spend, better money. You don't spend your money waste it as much. You are better with your weight and your health. You sleep better. Your life just generally seems calmer and more peaceful when in the relationship than when outside of it. It's probably a healthy relationship and one that you should try and work on if you have issues rather than resorting back to your old life. Okay, so that's the first question I ask people to ask themselves whether or not they should stay or leave. The next question I would say to ask yourself whether or not to stay or leave a relationship is, how attractive do you feel in this relationship? Now, of course, if you've been together for years and years, you don't really expect to feel like a supermodel every single day. But do you feel like you are somewhat invisible? Do you feel like your partner is capable of showing attraction to other people? Do you feel like you have to beg for physical intimacy, either just affection or actual intimacy from your partner? If those things are starting to take place, the reason why that's a bit of a red flag and why that's an indicator of the demise of a relationship is, unfortunately, when the attraction disappears, your ability to resolve conflict as a couple disappears. What will happen is, instead of resolving the conflict and, getting back to being intimate and connected, you might just resolve the conflict by, cooking and eating together and going, like, dropping each other to work or whatever it is. It doesn't actually restore intimacy. Of course, it's not the end of the world if that happens, but you might want to be mindful of this when deciding whether or not you should stay or leave. The next question I ask my clients when they are thinking about whether they're staying in a relationship or ending it is, I ask them this very simple question. If this person stays exactly the same and potentially gets to 20% worse, would you be able to tolerate them? The answer is, actually, you know what, their baseline level of behavior is actually very good. And if they got 10 or 20% worse because of kids and because of like stress or whatever it is, I could cope with that. It's not the end of the world. But if you're hanging in by a thread and you are barely with the person for who they are now, and if they even got a percentile worse, you don't know if you'd be able to handle it. Last thing you should be doing is cementing your commitment. I'll have couples that will start to get married, but before they're getting married, they're like, okay, I need him to change, endless stuff. And if they get any worse with this, I won't be able to do it, but we need to get married. No, don't make those decisions. Don't cement your foundation of your relationship when you couldn't tolerate them getting a minute worse, or you wouldn't tolerate them getting a single percentile worse. So only be with somebody who, if they got 10 to 20% worse than who they are today, you could marry them and be relatively happy. You might not be ecstatic that they got worse, but you could be okay. The mistake people make is they assume people are going to get better or things are going to get better. The better thing to do is for people to get worse and ask yourself, can I tolerate this? If they get 10% worse, 20% worse, can I tolerate it? If the answer is yes, perfect. If the answer is no way, then don't plan for an imaginary outcome of positive improvements. It's not going to happen. Okay? If you are really undecided about whether or not to stay or leave in a relationship, just imagine two scenarios. Imagine, okay, if I stay with them in 10 years' time and they are exactly who they are, what would my life look like? Worst case scenario. Hi guys, thank you for tuning in. For the rest of this video and for exclusive weekly content that you won't get anywhere else on the internet, make sure you join my Patreon. The link is in the bio. Not only will you be able to watch all my exclusive content, but you'll also be able to ask me a question anytime throughout the month. So thank you so much for watching. The links are in the bio.